If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that one of the themes that runs through these conversations is the intersection between creativity, innovation, context, and mindset. We've talked with entrepreneurs, artists, technologists, and founders about how ideas become real. But at the core of that is something deeper, the consciousness and awareness of the people creating and building those ideas. Well, this week I'm speaking with Paola Castro, a coach and spiritual teacher based in Costa Rica. Several years ago, I attended a workshop that she led, and what struck me immediately was the clarity and authenticity with which she speaks about the human experience, about growth, about suffering, and about the realization that so much of what we're chasing externally is really a search for something that already exists within all of us. In this conversation, we explore the difference between living life as if it's happening to us versus experiencing it as something happening for us and ultimately through us. And we talk about why in a world that feels increasingly complex and overwhelming, some of the most powerful insights are actually the simplest ones. For me, this episode sits right at the heart of what producing innovation is really about. Not just innovation in technology or business, but innovation in how we understand ourselves and how we show up in the world. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Paola Castro. Let's get into it. Paola Castro, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to see you.
It's a pleasure to see you again, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really special conversation for me and a special episode, in part because, for a long time, I had sort of separated the different aspects of my life. There was the artist, Michael, and then there was the coaching client, Michael, and then there was the entrepreneur, Michael, and there were the spiritual experience, Michael, and the Michael and, the sober Michael. And the thing that I've realized over the course of time is that it is the threading together of all those things that are for me, my greatest strength. And there are many people who have contributed to my spiritual journey and helping me understand things in a way. Many, authors, thinkers. I talk a lot about Eckhart Tolle. I talk a lot about Jack Kornfield. I talk a lot about so many people, and even AA as a spiritual program has had such a huge influence on me. But several years ago, I did a workshop that Paola conducted and led. And it was, I don't know why. I think you'll understand when Paola starts talking that she has a certain generousness, a certain open-heartedness, a certain clarity about her own spiritual experience that she just conveys in a very natural and authentic way. And that was really my excitement of having Paola on the podcast today, because the more I live and work, and especially now, our moment in history, I think that the convergence of creativity, spirituality, technology, innovation, all of those things are going to be so essential to us progressing, I think, as a societies, as a civilization. And I think that accessibility of these ideas is so important to that. And that's really a big part of why I'm doing this podcast in general. And specifically today, why I was so excited to have Paola on. So Paola, first question to you, just for the benefit of people who maybe, aren't familiar with you or hear the word spiritual and are like, a lot of people have a sort of knee-jerk reaction, even that term. I don't know that you necessarily use that term as much as or in the same ways as I do, but I'd love for them to just get the benefit of a little bit of background. Like, what has been your journey? What led you to the insights that have sort of advanced your life, your understanding, your spiritual journey, your life as a coach? Just really anything that you think would be a good primer for someone to understand prior to us getting into maybe some of the specifics about your insights and understanding of what the human experience is at its core. So with that, some background.
Okay. So I think most of the people that are attracted to the personal growth and spiritual growth, that most of us at a very young age, maybe we experience trauma, we experience a painful, most humans, I would say, but there is the kind of human that says, this hurts. Then what is life all about? Like, let me understand this. Many times it comes from pain, and certainly that was for me. I didn't have a traumatic childhood, but definitely there were moments in my childhood where I felt the falling from grace, if you will, of like I was in this state of static bliss, and now I'm 7, 8 years old, and like life starting to feel a little bit less of a dream and more of a nightmare. And so I remember thinking at a very young age, big questions. And as I got older, I just kept asking questions. So I know that many of your listeners will confirm that for themselves. I've been asking these questions. Life has to be something else than just what society or my family or my religion is showing me. I grew up in a very Christian home. And so, many of the teachings are beautiful. And there were many of the things that I said, wait a minute, that does not make sense to me. It seems too reductionistic, if you will. I don't know if that's a word, but it felt too narrow. And I felt very expansive within myself. So as I grew older, I decided to study coaching because I was fascinated about the personal development world, and graduated 14 years ago and starting giving talks and giving sessions. And I was just so enthusiastic. It was coming from this beautiful innocence of like, let me help the world, let me, let's be better, right? All together. I really admire my 26, 27-year-old version of me because she started this journey with so much enthusiasm. Then the journey got real when I realized, oh, look at me. I am doing all of this work from a space of let me fix myself. Let me do everything right so that I don't have to suffer anymore. So then the veil started lifting even more, where I realized I'm doing this from a space of scarcity, from poverty mentality, like I am not enough, therefore I have to fix myself. And that was a big slap in my face because then I was like, my hands were thrown in the air and be like, well, then what? I've done all of this, done the seminars, studied the books. What we do, we go on this journey, and then we still have this constant feeling of, but I'm still empty. Like, what is it? And we continue to create outwards personas, careers. How do I get validated? And I felt that. I felt at some point I was reaching out for all these things, and it just was taking away from me and then giving me life. Now it all happens in a long period of time, but it's like all the little drops that I was hinting, and life, it's really good at giving you like those rock bottoms so that you everything that you think you knew kind of goes off the window, and then you really have to search, and not outwards but inwards. I love reading books. Love information. Oh my goodness. I could read and learn all day long, and at the end of the day, all I need to know is inside of myself. And I know you've heard this and your listeners have heard this before. And that is such a simple but potent lesson. And that's where spirituality or the eternal comes into the picture of where we cannot continue to make the mind our God. But we need to journey from the head to the heart, because the head, it's our unevolved self, is the past self, everything that the mind is. So the mind will give you answers, with reference to what happened in your family, what the genetics are, what the world is doing. The mind is very limited. And sometimes we get to points where like the mind has no answers for me, and the world has no answers for me either. It has perceptions, ideas, but I must find it within myself. So that's what you said is, are you a spiritual teacher? I don't know if I'll call it that way, but what I know is that I am using my life as guiding myself back to the heart, and in my journey, my experiment, tell people what I'm finding. So that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I so identify with that journey, and how moments of challenge can sort of push us in curiosity, and asking questions, and asking the deeper questions about our life and our experience, and where is it going and what does it mean. When some of the things that I think in my own journey was some of the things that I was told, were supposed to kind of complete me and didn't, and then you're sort of left like with that, like as you said, with that hands up in the air moment of like, well, now what, and I think the other piece that for me is so key, and I know we kind of share this, is making things accessible. I think that a lot of spiritual teachers sometimes, and some of the bigger, kind of religious traditions, spiritual traditions, can be a little, technical, or lean into the jargon too much, or certain ideas that feel like important. And it's one of the reasons I love Eckhart Tolle so much, because He's like, all of it really boils down. Everyone's trying to tell the same story and point to the same thing. They're all signposts pointing to the same thing. And that idea of call it God, you can call it being, you can call it, universal intelligence, whatever. But it's that thing that, and to me, the way I explain it or I understand it is just like what made for all this to be possible. Like what preceded, that consciousness preceded certainly our ability, our being here, and the idea of like the no thing, and then the thing, the space, and then the object in space, and just even that I say that and I'm like that sounds a little esoteric or a little weird,
Yeah.
but like I think this was all leading me to say that I think like an idea like gratitude to me is such a core spiritual idea. In fact, some people like Cartoli says it's sort of the pinnacle sort of awakened state
Yes.
of spiritual awakening, gratitude to understand that like I'm just a recipient of all these incredible gifts. And really in that context, there are no problems. It's not like what problem do I need to fix in this future state? It's the realization that like I'm already complete.
Yes.
I'm already satisfied. I've already won in that way.
Yes. Yes. And that's what the true spiritual path is, to come to it, to remember that we are already complete. There's nothing missing. And when we're believing, when we're getting distracted in the programming of the mind, that's when we fall into the trap of like, I got to do more. I got to be more. I got to attain more. I got to achieve more. It's always that more and more. And it's like that dangling carrot that you never grab, right? It's always right in front of your face. And so we got to be aware. We got to be aware that that is a game that I've been listening to this wonderful teacher from Argentina. His content is mostly in Spanish, but I'm going to be a translator here in English. And he says, this is a game. We are in a game, but this is a game that you don't play it against anyone. This is not a competition. This is a game that instead of you trying to win it, it's for you to enjoy it, to experience it. And I just remember listening to those words and it's like, yes, I can recognize that as my truth. But so we're in this in society, and the program of this third dimensional game is it's a lot about even when children are learning something or anyone is learning something, let's say you're learning a dance, it is natural for us to look at the person next to us. Am I doing it right? We're constantly in this comparison and am I where I'm supposed to be, like what society says? And so we're in this constant competition against others, against ourselves, and we're losing. We're losing because we're suffering all the time. So those who are listening here, the way to play the game is not through suffering, is through learning how to enjoy it. So to your point, Michael, gratitude. How can I be grateful just for the present moment? And I know some people are like, oh my God, I've heard about gratitude, but I don't feel like gratitude because all these things are happening in my life. Well, sometimes we boil it down to the gratitude of like, I have faith that there's love in this moment. I don't know how or why this perpetrator is in my life, or why the governments are doing this, or why my family is thinking all of this, but somewhere here there's love, and I am willing to see that there's a lesson here for me that I chose perhaps before I came incarnated into this world, and there's a lesson for me. I'm not saying don't grieve, don't emote, because that's spiritual bypassing, but it's how do I create the emotional intelligence that equips me so that when something happens, I don't become reactionary. I don't react, that I can choose, kind of like what Viktor Frankl says, the ultimate of freedoms is choice, is choosing my response to life. And then, the more flexible we become with reality and assimilate what reality is, and know that everything is for us and not against us at some point. And now who's listening and you're like, Paula, you don't know what's happening to me. Like I can't even say those words. This is happening for me. Put it in the back of your mind. At some point it will make sense. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but at some point you'll see that there are pearls of wisdom along the way. But that is how we learn to enjoy the game. This game is not to win it. It's not a race against anyone. It's a game just like children, they just play. He
Hmm.
was talking about it, if I may say one more story. He was
Please, yeah.
talking about an interview that they did to Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. They're the best football or soccer players in the world. And, they come from different spaces. And I mean, this is a judgment. I don't know their lives. I don't know much about them. One of them was speaking about how grateful he was because he was one of the best players because he was playing always against this other amazing super player. And like I was like, oh, because I was competing against you, that's why we're both the best, right? And it's all very outwardly, like, see me and I'm this, I'm that. And then they asked the other guy, what are your thoughts of being one of the greatest? And his answer was like, I just love playing the ball. He didn't
Mm,
even call it soccer. I just love
mm,
playing ball because
mm.
because I just like to play. That is spirituality, if we were going to use a word, is simple. It's not complicated. It's not about because I'm going to do it because someone else is asking me to do this, or even that's why I'm careful about the spiritual word, because sometimes we believe ourselves to be spiritual and then we take on a
Sure.
persona. We
Yep.
wear the hats and the things and the beat mala beads. Nothing wrong with that, but it's a persona. It's like, are you enjoying the game, or are you just playing a role because you think that's what spiritual means? You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And, I've shared before that I consider myself to be a very practical person. And I'm just drawn, as I was to art, I'm just drawn to certain ideas that make sense to me. And I don't consider myself at all to be a spiritual teacher. I consider myself to be someone who is just trying in my own kind of human fumbling way to figure out things that work for me. And in fact, these conversations and my own exploration is just that. It's my own way of learning. And then this is the process of me sharing that learning. So it's like the opportunity to speak with you and to read and to learn and speak with others is just for me a way to deepen my own understanding, but really with no end in mind, just for the sake of learning. I mean, one, I just love talking with people that I find fascinating and exciting, and two, if I can gain an insight that helps me just enjoy my day more.
Yes.
Gratitude to me is just a simple, practical
Yeah.
thing that as I practiced it helped me see the world in a much more positive light. And that enhanced my experience of the people around me, the circumstances I was in, and I realized that was just a choice ultimately. And it's funny you mentioned one of the sort of the I remember in the workshop that you did talking about the kind of the different sort of levels, I guess, of sort of spiritual experience or consciousness, I guess. And the first is the idea of the life is happening to me. It's sort of kind of against me even. And things are I'm a victim of life in some way. And I think gratitude is one of the most powerful levers to shift that is
Yes.
happening for me. That
Yes.
that 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 these things that I may my ego brain may define as bad or good or negative or positive. Cartoli would say that from my understanding of him is that they're just situations, and how we respond to them is something that we have choice over. And that idea of like responding to everything that life brings me as if I chose it
Yes.
gives me agency. It gives
Yes.
me the ability to say, hey, this may not be what I wanted, what I asked for, but how do I want to navigate this? Do I want to let it persist? Do I want to get away from this as quickly as possible? What can I learn from this moment? Even things in my own life that were very difficult, loss, grief,
Yes.
other things that happened to me that ultimately some of the things that I was only able to take away from it were like, now I know how to help someone else experience something as hard as this. And that in some instances is enough. It's like now it is a positive. I get to transmute this sort of negative experience into something that I get to give as a gift to someone else
Yes.
because I can help them navigate shame or something. I mean, there's a lot of that in the recovery communities that I exist in and that I operate in. And that transmutation is itself such a gift because there were experiences that I had real shame around. I was like, what could possibly be the good of this except then to learn that wow, now I know how to help someone out of this situation because I've been there, and now they get to have that moment of connection and identification and not feel so alone. Just that is enough to make it all make sense in a way. And so, yeah, anyway, I was kind of on a little bit of
Yes.
a rant there, but
And
but
and
yeah,
you
I'd
know,
love to hear what you would say about the whole like that idea of happening life happening to me versus for me versus as me, right? Versus through me. And that sort of paradigm of explaining consciousness or explaining progression.
right. So if I tap into again this idea that, let's say we're in a game, right? Like a video game, and there are levels of consciousness or levels of the game. You know, when you play Mario Bros and then you like get to a different world. So it's not as linear as a video game, but in consciousness, we can navigate this game of life as a victim, which is a very primitive level of the game. And I say primitive because when we're in victim consciousness, we're in survival consciousness. It's you know, it's the tiger in the woods chasing me. And of course I have to either freeze or run. It's a primal response to fear. You know, in computer, the program they say runs with zeros and ones, right? We're in a binary program. And the zeros and the ones represent love or fear. So the way to play a higher game or a more fun game is that we want to be aiming for the vibration of love. And I'm not talking about romantic love. We all know that that universal love. But that first level of the game, it's primarily fear, survival. And so you feel victimized by everything that is going on. And right now in the world there's so much going on that program in and of itself, it's infusing fear. And here's something a little controversial maybe for some people. And sometimes we feel like if we participate in the conversation of fear, that we're doing something for the world. And my teacher, Michael Beckwith, says this world that is crumbling apart doesn't need any saving. That is disappearing. We're building a new world with new ideas in community, with people that are creative. Like we need to stop asking our governments and all these people that are corrupt, that are, you know, full of power and greed and all of that. So be aware. If this resonates, take it. If it doesn't resonate, that's all right. But be aware of how much news you consume and how much you talk about the files and the pedophiles and like it. Thank God we're getting the veil is being lifted. We are seeing, you know, oh my God, there are some people here in the world that are not for the betterment of the world. And be aware how much you feed yourself with it, because I feel that that is part of the agenda. And you might call me conspiracy theories, but the more people feel fear, even if it's the truth, the more victimized we feel. So just a side note there, but or end, we can also live that way with our, you know, at work with our colleagues, or, you know, at home with our spouses. We're constantly, you know, blaming the other, when in reality it's all a reflection of what's going on here, right? So when we shift the conversation to be like, if I'm a victim, I'm definitely losing the game, even if it's not a game to lose or win, but I'm definitely not doing a good game. How can I see love in the midst of this? And love is not like, you know, oh, everything it's all right. And when things are not all right, like we're not denying reality. But what we're aiming is to, I'm in the level of fear. How can I raise my vibration a little bit? Just an inch,
Hmm.
tapping into gratitude, loving yourself. Sometimes we talk, and I've spoken a lot about forgiveness, forgive your perpetrator, forgive, you know, the people, forgive the government, forgive all of that. And sometimes it's really hard to forgive. It's almost like it's unreachable for the person who is suffering. So, because we're all one, and I don't know if I'm giving too much information without context, but there is that idea that we all stem from the one source, the one mind. You know, after the Big Bang, boom, source says, I am everything that it is. What can I become? And then it created all this fractals of light. And here we are in one of the most dense realities that exists, called the earth. So, why do I believe that why do I know that we're one with the one? And I'm not saying a God in the sky. I'm saying an energy that is ever present, that has no name, has no form. So we have this idea we got to forgive and we got to love other people. And there are situations where accessing to that is very, very hard, especially if it's someone that in the moment is doing some sort of aggression towards you. When we love ourselves, when we turn that love, not to love them, but to love ourselves, to treat ourselves with kindness, to be on our side, we are simultaneously loving the other because we're one. So that's another way of going from victim consciousness to a higher level of the game, to more of a creator consciousness, where you say, okay, I know that I'm in a game with all this programming, but I get to choose differently. I get to create differently. And again, that's where self-love, gratitude practices, being good to ourselves. We don't even have to go so outwardly. We can just start with the conversation that we're entertaining between these two ears and talk ourselves with kindness. I think that's the way that we end the war that we so judge about the world. The world is just out picturing the immense war that we're having inside ourselves. I mean, and there's other powers of being there that, of course, we did not create, and at some point we're participating every time you're giving in to being mean to yourself, to being critical of yourself, to be in suffering. It's almost like you're sourcing this bigger picture of fear and yuckiness. Does that
Yeah,
make sense? Am I making sense or am I being too out
100%.
there?
Yeah, no, 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 no. Absolutely making sense. And I think, I mean, some of these ideas and topics and ways of being are, I mean, there's a reason that most of the planet, and the people on it are sort of stuck in a certain way of thinking and a certain, that I was stuck until, and continue, can be stuck at any given moment. But like, I look at so much of my life, I thought like my present was this insufficient kind of broken reality, not what I wanted, problem to be solved, and that the solution was in the future.
Yes.
And when I really understood that for myself, I looked around, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's been my whole life. And just about everybody I know is in a similar idea, has a similar idea that that we're trying to like fix this broken future fix this broken present by getting to the future, except that the future always stays in the future. And that the only thing, and another way to say that is like we're stuck in our mind, we're stuck in
Yes.
our ego, we're stuck in this
Yes.
idea, this like thought pattern. And in fact, the only thing, like our whole life, every moment of our life is it only happens in the present. The only place that we can experience anything is in the present. And when I just looked at my own life, saw like how much I wasn't in my present. I was worried about the future. I was anticipating something in the future, regretting something in the past, feeling shame about something in the past, and this toggling back and forth. And all of that made me feel separate. And ultimately, what I heard and what you were saying is the idea of being that we ultimately separate ourselves from that source. And I think that is sort of, again, just putting it in my own experience, that was the kind of soul sickness, if you will, that I had and that I experienced for so much of my life. Was I felt alone and I felt separate from the source. I felt alone in the universe. I felt alone even in community. I felt anxious and apart for so much, for a lot of my time, a lot of my relationships. And it was in realizing like that, one, there's no problem to be solved, that the present is this really wonderful, incredible gift that I've been given in my life, and that we've all been given in one way or another. And that the only way to access it is in the present, in the right now. And I think that like it's some of these insights and how they relate to the idea of creativity, of innovation, of insight, of knowledge and learning and elevating consciousness, and all the things that I think need to happen for the individual to really be fulfilled, and for us as a society and as a civilization to achieve, our our purpose in a way is to connect back with that sort of source, and you could call it consciousness, but like connect with it in a way where we realize that we're not separate and that we're not alone and that we are together and that we're one with this entire life experience. And I think that fundamentally changes how we perceive everything. And I think what our actions are. I think a lot of the things that drive people is a sort of almost desperation to fix a problem that is a bit of a phantom illusion. Um, I'm really attracted to the idea that there are situations that can be challenging, but there are no like problems. And I think that that's a really useful way to think about it. And that unlocks, at least in my experience, a lot of potential and a lot of freedom and a lot of joy and a
Right.
lot of ability to be with others.
Love that. Yes. Yes. The present moment. That's it. Again, it's very, very simple. And for those listening, sometimes I would say to people, can hear this as a philosophy and not like something that you can actually do because you're caught up in the busyness of life. And that's the thing of the ego. It just, in order to fix its future, it keeps adding, and so you build all these things in your life. You get the house, you get the car, you get it. Nothing wrong with having a beautiful life, but sometimes we're in this desperation of seeking an answer for the person that I don't like. I'm gonna keep working so that in the future. And so I see in my clients' lives that are so busy, so full of noise everywhere, pulling their energy in a million directions. And so when they listen to a podcast and they're like, well, we're all one, let's go within, connect to source. Um, it seems like there's no room for it. So the spiritual path, my teacher says, is not a path of acquiring, it's a path of letting go. Actually, today I started a challenge on Instagram about 30 days of a letting go challenge, because it's not about gaining, it's about removing. Remember that we already said you're already whole. Don't do this work from not enough, do it from the knowing there are no problems. All I got is the present moment. And in the present moment, I got everything I need. But that is only possible to feel it, to be it, to know it, not intellectually understand it, but to know it. When we have the courage to remove. And this removal doesn't have to be a destruction, doesn't have to be overnight, but slowly, every day, what can I remove that is taking away from the attention? I want to say something before I carry on. We all know we're in an attention economy, right?
Yeah, of course.
We thought money was important, the most important resource. We thought time was the most important resource. Is not it. It's attention. Your attention, my attention is gold, because where your attention goes, energy flows. And as a collective, that's why I said be aware of putting too much of your attention on what's negative, because we're feeding the beast. We're putting more on it. So my idea with this challenge is like, where can I take my attention from places and bring it back to here? In Christianity, I learned that God is out there. Now, thank God for the Eastern philosophies where they know that God is over here. It's inverted. It's the opposite. I don't find God over there. It's right here at the center of my being, God, universe, higher self, whatever you call it. So the journey is not outwards. The game is not with them or anything in the world. You played in here. So if I could give a tip, a suggestion of something that I'm consciously doing every day, because as I said before, I love information, but too much information creates information indigestion, right? It's too much to digest. Information, even helping people can be a distraction. Depending on where you come from, sometimes it could come from that martyr. I need to help everyone so that because my church, my Bible said that, if I am so giving, then I'll be saved or I'll have the grace of God. Be aware, we all have this intuition that tells us, where am I getting so busy that instead of, because I'm seeking for love in the wrong places, but is actually doing the opposite. And that's one of the big philosophers. I can't remember who it was. it escaped the name, but he said, simplify, simplify. Don't get so busy. And it doesn't happen overnight. We live in a capitalistic world that is driven by more. But it's less, 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 less. That's, I think, one of the most simple things I can offer for all of us today.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, a way that I found it really useful to think about that is anything that I'm projecting out into the future. You mentioned the house and the car and the recognition of others. And when those things become the answer, they've inverted. They've taken on too much importance because the answer, the solution, like when the house is the solution, when money is the solution, when a relationship is the solution, it's creating a problem, to which it has to be the solution too. So the emptiness that I feel will be solved when I get X. And I think it's fine. So go ahead.
And if you think about it, some people say bigger house, bigger problems, more money in the bank, bigger problems. Yes and no. Yes, if you did it from a space of fear. And
Yeah.
that's the binary code, right?
But
If
like
I'm
need.
operating from fear,
Yeah.
then the house is going to ask you from life force. Then the family is going to take life force from you. Then everything will suck the life out of you because you did it from a space of fear. I'm not saying let's not aim for a great life, but we got to be aware, am I doing it from the coding of fear? I'm doing it the coding of love.
Yep. Yeah, that to me is the difference. It's like doing it for like with a kind of flavor of addiction or need versus like, yeah, I love my home. I
Yes.
put a lot of energy into my home, but it's not the answer to anything. It's not the solution to a problem. It's something that I enjoy doing. And if I had to lose it, I'd be fine to lose it. And there are different things that I've learned. It's like the more to have desire is fine. Need, and have that be rooted in fear of loss, that's when it becomes imbalanced. And I think that's when you're basically implying, or when I've done that, I'm implying that like I have this problem, my problem is my present. When I get the thing in the future, it'll be the solution and I'll be whole, when in fact I'm already whole.
Exactly.
I already have what I need, and I agree. Like stripping things away, I've been doing that in my own life recently in many different ways, and saying, "What do I really need? What do I
Yes.
really want? Like, what can I let go of? What have I been using in a way that is sort of like trying to like complete me when I'm already complete? And letting that go is such a liberation. And I find it like as a creative person, as an innovator, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, like the joy, like doing things from a place of desire and joy is
Yes.
so much more powerful than doing it from a place of need or scarcity.
Right. And then what you create when you create it from love and joy and passion, if it nourishes you back, it gives you back instead of being this source of worry. I've heard a lot of people talking about very wealthy people that they're constantly in this anxiety and worry. And that's what ultimately takes us from the present moment, that attachment, that fear, because we don't know if we're going to be okay. But I heard this story of the, Waldorf schools,
Yeah, yeah,
children
sure.
that go to
Of
Waldorf
course.
schools. Yeah. So
Yeah.
apparently, when they're in the third grade, around 8 or 9 years old, children start kind of getting a hang of the idea of death. And some children will get really fearful that their parents are going to die. Like, what happens if you die? The idea is that the child, yes, they don't want to lose their parents, but mostly is about them. What do I do if you're not in my life? Because I depend 100% on you. And so the speaker was saying that in these Waldorf schools, and whoever's listening, maybe they can confirm this if you have worked with that way of teaching children, um, have an interesting approach. They teach they teach children to knit, to kind of knit clothing or little pieces. They teach them to plant and harvest wheat like for bread. Then they teach them how to make bread. They go, if they have a garden, the school has a garden, they teach them how to like build a teepee with with natural resources. And so they're not really approaching the child saying, hey, you're going to be all right if your parents die. No, they're teaching the children that they have ways. I mean, obviously, when you're a child, you can not survive on your own. That is a given. But when you grow, you'll have the resources that you need to deal with the present moment. So they're teaching them emotional intelligence. When we're constantly in the future because we're so afraid that we're going to lose what we've built with so much strength, and I'm like that child, what if it goes away? So I need to work harder. That is the thing that robs us from the present moment, is the worry about a future that is not even here. So I need to worry about the future so that future never happens, so I'm never here. The beautiful teaching that you're giving us, the present moment contains everything. But when we, and this is where personal development comes into very handy, when we grow our emotional intelligence, when I say I'm not going to be a victim, I am resourced. I will have the emotional resources that I need so that if something catastrophic happens in my, I will be able to feed myself and have a house over my, I have the possibilities. I believe that many of us go into a crisis and go down the rock bottom because we don't have the education, or we believe in the illusion that we don't have the resources to survive. So I just love it. I don't have children, but if I ever do, I'll definitely put them in a Waldorf school, because what a wonderful lesson when you're so little to know that, hey, yes, this is a valid fear and you can learn to live this life. You will learn how to have the resources to live this life. So it translates to emotional intelligence, and that is how we level up in consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. One of my closest colleagues has a lot of experience with that. And he's one of the most
They,
adaptable, resilient,
yes,
uh,
resilience.
yeah, yeah, well-resourced, competent people I know. So that's wonderful. I think, Paula, I just love speaking with you, and I love being in this inquiry because, again, I don't feel like it's the goal is to quote unquote figure it out in any final way. This is just, to me, part of the game of exploring and learning and self-improvement, and without a goal in mind. The Alcoholics Anonymous has an idea of progress and not perfection, and I think it's inspired in me a desire to be learning without even any idea or any thought that you could ever reach a state of perfection, but rather just deepening our connection with consciousness, with our experience, with this gift of life that we've been given. And you really radiate that so clearly. I mean, you always have. I've always, since the first time we met, I'm like, wow, this person really
Thank
radiates a
you.
certain, consciousness and desire for learning and desire for improvement. And I know you to be such an exceptional coach and such a fan. If you said it, you said it a little bit when you were starting. You're talking about your 26-year-old self. But one question I always love to end with is what's something that you feel that you know now really deeply in your being, and that you would either offer to someone who is starting out, someone who is in their teens or 20s now, or if it's more useful to frame it this way, what advice would you give to your 19 or 20-year-old self about that you wish you knew then, or that you'd love to give yourself back as a bit of insight there to make your journey a little bit easier?
Hmm. I would tell her, seek the validation from within. I think there was a lot of exertion of energy, many, many years of, is the world thinking that I'm good enough so that I can feel good enough? I would say, use that energy to fortify the self-worth from source, from the one, from your heart. Spend all of your energy there, because it just makes this life just so much easier. You don't have to seek for the applause, or when the criticism comes, you just like, well, I guess we're not gonna be friends. But that's all right, and that's okay. Like, not be so seduced by the applause of people, or so scared for rejection of people. Just keep bringing that attention, that validation from within, and build that self-confidence that is quiet, that is not loud, that it doesn't have to be so out there and, yeah, it's a quiet confidence. That's what I would tell her. Yeah. I don't know if she would have hurt me, but
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about kids. I have a 18, soon to be 19-year-old. And sometimes when I think about that question, I realize more and more that a lot of the things that I'm learning and sharing, I kind of do definitely with an eye towards myself at that age and my sons at that age. And it is a challenging moment in many respects, and yet life is so rich and life is so wonderful, and there's so much reason for just profound gratitude
yes.
from us kind of across the board. Like, this life that we get is so improbable, so magical, such a gift.
Yes.
So I'd love to end there. Paola,
Thank you, Michael.
such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Thank you for doing this. And if you've listened this far, hopefully you've connected with some of these wonderful ideas and these sentiments. Thanks for listening today.
Thank you so much, Michael. What a joy to speak with you.